there's little monsters, they pop up, and you could whack them with a hammer, like whack-a-mole, no problem if you wanted to. But if you don't do that for 360,000 decisions, then they all aggregate into this looming chaos monster, and the probability that that thing's going to eat you is, or that you're going to live in its belly, because that's where you end up. It's a very bad idea, and it's often the case that people just don't have enough time and energy left, or willpower, or character by that time, because they're destroying their own character. They've had it. You cannot help them. You cannot fix it. They're done. They can't be rescued from hell.
What does it mean to live in their belly? It's a metaphor, but what would that be like?
Oh, that's easy. It's like. Remember I told you about those experiments with the married couples? The ones that are going to get divorced. They walk into the little bed and breakfast and it's, "Hi dear," and with a kind of no eyes smile. It's like, that's a predatory smile. It's like, "I kind of like you, but these are really teeth and they're for eating." You know, really, it's not pleasant. And so they're interacting with each other. Both of them are really nice, but they're not. They're not nice at all. They're carnivorous right to the damn core. And so on the surface, it's all roses and sunshine, and like a little inch below, it's all like like if you could see they're unconscious, you'd see two people with their hands around each other's throat. And their body knows that, because up goes the cortisol, up goes the heart rate, they're sweating away. You know, that's the belly of the beast. That's what that is. And your body, it's smart, it knows where you are. You can ignore it, which you do. It's like, "Oh, this isn't too bad." It's like, yeah, it is. It's really bad. It's really, really, really bad. And you do that long enough, it's like, good luck for you. You've polluted your psyche and your surroundings to such a degree that you can't fix it. And it gets worse than that, because if you stay there long enough, you won't even want to fix it. You'll be so angry at yourself or the other person that you're going to try as hard as you can to do everything you possibly can to make it as bad as you possibly can. And since you have virtually an unlimited imagination for evil, it can get really bad. So, and you get into a self-sustaining spiral at some point, and that's a hellish descent. And the reason that hell is bottomless is because no matter how bad it is, there's some damn devious, nasty, horrible little thing that you can do, that you will do, that will make it worse. So, people who think that hell isn't real, they're just not paying any attention at all. It's plenty real. You could make a pretty strong case that if a seven-headed snake with infinite length came rolling towards you, it's like time to head for the hills, right? Not like stand there with your bronze axe. Sure, but it wasn't conscious. It was mimicry, which is how you do it too. You don't go to a movie like Iron Man, because Iron Man's mythological to the core, especially the Avengers movie. It had a brilliant mythological theme. And you don't go there and watch Iron Man and then come out and say, well, let's decode Iron Man into his behavioral micro elements and incorporate those. You don't do that. You're gripped by it. You're gripped by it. And the transmission of information is at a level that's below articulation. It's imagistic. So maybe it's modifying the structure of the contents of your right hemisphere, who God only knows. It's embodied. That's why you know what happens. You take a kid out to see a Superman movie, and then you bring them home. What do they want to do? They want to put on a little Superman cape and wander around being Superman, And that's the level at which the information is being transmitted. So that, well, what's Superman like? Well, we'll play that out. And to the degree that you can play it out, then the Superman element, insofar as you can mimic it, now becomes part of your behavioral repertoire. So, did they know what they were doing? Depends on what you mean by know. Could they fully articulate what they were doing? No, but neither can we. So, that's what they knew. Like, they weren't taking something they knew in an articulated form and saying, let's represent it as a Hydra and a hero. It's completely the other way around. It's like, we don't know what the hell we're doing, but it seems sort of like a guy with a bronze axe attacking a snake. It's like, What kind of snake? Well, it's an infinite snake with many heads. You know, and that would have been a work of imagination. Maybe conscious imagination, you know, like, because those are artistic productions, definitely. But they're products of fantasy. So this chaos monster, dragon, breaks itself into two things. That's the initial differentiation. So it breaks itself into the Great Father and the Great Mother. So that's the emergence. So it's the Great Mother, in some sense, emerges first and the Great Father second, although you can't really say that. Like, the way the myths work is that three things emerge at the same time. The Great Mother, so that's kind of the unknown as you confront it, and the Great Father, which is you as a reader, and then the hero, which is you as an active agent. You might say one of those precedes the other, but that isn't how it works. In the myths, it just says, no, as soon as things split, that's what they split into. There has to be something, there has to be the interpretation of something, and there has to be the interpreter. Those are the fundamental elements of being. And so it's an idea. The fundamental elements of being are, there's a pool of information, there's a reader of the information, so that would be Osiris, roughly speaking, and then there's a reader. And so think about what happens when you're reading a book. You know, you might say, well, where is the book? And you'd say, well, here's the book. It's this little chunk of wood fiber. It's like, well, no. That's what your visual system deludes you into thinking when you're using it. That's not the book at all. The book contains patterns. It contains representations of behavioral patterns. And the way that you interpret those behavioral patterns is by using the reader that's in your head, which is really that structure, that hierarchical structure that I talked about. Because if you didn't have that in your damn head, you couldn't understand the book. Because the only thing that, like if you and I are talking and we're communicating, there's a lot we have to agree on before we can even say anything. Which we might disagree. So if I'm writing a book for you people as the readers, what I have to do is assume a bunch of things that you know, because then I don't have to say those things. Because it would take an infinite amount of time to say everything that I need to say, so I have to assume that there's a trillion things I don't have to say because I already know that you know them, and so then I can play at the fringes with those things. So, for example, I can lay out a story about my character becoming angry, and I don't have to like tell you, you know, well, we can tell he's angry because his brow is furrowed, and you know he's starting to sweat, and there's a bad taste in his mouth, and if you're angry, that's how you feel, and because you already know all that, so I don't have to bother with that. I can just say, you know, I can just set up the situation, and poof, you know what anger means, you know what sorrow means, you know what love means, etc., etc. So that's why the reader has to be there, and the thing to read, sorry, the structure, the interpreter has to be there, and the thing that's doing the interpretation and the thing that's being interpreted have to all come out at the same time. Poof. And that's the hero, the Great Mother, and the Great Father. So that's how they pop out. Now, let me show you some cool things. There they are! Now, students sent me the one on the left. That's an ancient Chinese representation, and then that one's Greek. It's so cool. Look at that. You have the dragon in the background, the snake with the knot in its tail. That's ancient Greek. And it's Chinese. It's a very old Chinese representation. And out of the snake pops the divine parents. Well, why is that? Well, it's partly because that one of the primary things that emerges out of undifferentiated reality for human beings is the male and the female, the father and the mother. I mean, that's the first things you come into contact with, roughly speaking, when you emerge out of the void. And that's archetypal. We know who a father is, we know who a mother is. It's like... That's the differentiation of the genders. What time is it? Yeah, okay. Okay, well, let's leave it there. That's good. Now we've got into the Great Mother and the Great Father, and I'm going to show you their symbolic representation and their positive, because one of the things that happens is you get the Great Mother and the Great Father pop up, and then the next thing is that they differentiate, again, and they differentiate into positive mother and negative mother, and positive father and negative father. And then at the same time, the product of those two things, which is the hero, that also emerges, and it differentiates into the hero and the adversary. And so then you have enough at that point, you have enough differentiation at that point in terms of representation that you can basically encapsulate the whole world. And so that's at the base of our conceptual structures.